Every so often, a person of a certain type emerges at the forefront of our collective consciousness, and movies will do what movies do, exploiting that cultural cachet and building a subgenre around them. That's where we get trends in movies like blaxploitation, hicksploitation, nunsploitation. I mean, you get the gist. And right now, a type keenly capturing our attention is the chud, and the genre surrounding it is what I'm calling chudsploitation. Trademark. Now, a chud, for the uninitiated, is internet shorthand for a specific kind of man. Culturally reactionary, socially maladjusted, convinced that he's owed something, specifically from women, and increasingly furious that he's not collecting on that debt. You probably know the type. And in my extensive scholarly studies, I've found that there's no one-size-fits-all chud. They have different shapes, different morphologies, and horror has made movies for many of them. So in today's video, we're going to go over the most prominent films of the chudsploitation subgenre and examine the taxonomy of chud most strongly featured in each. Strap in, and I'm not going to regret making this video at all. We begin our journey in the coke-dusted halls of a Manhattan investment bank, where our first specimen, Patrick Bateman, is vice president. He's also probably a serial killer. Bateman is held prisoner inside a world where the performance of social status is everything. The infamous business card scene where four men in expensive suits have a collective nervous breakdown over whose card stock is heavier is not a joke, despite how fucking funny it is. Because it's deadly serious to the type of man for whom dominance is the only meaningful relationship and whose surface appearance is the only meaningful reality. Bateman doesn't only kill because he's a psycho, if he actually kills anyone at all. He kills because his value system has no room for human connection. And in that value system, violence, whether it's expressed physically, emotionally, or both, is the only human connection left to him when his performance of his alpha status fails. That's the alpha performer. American Psycho named him in 2000. And what became the manosphere spent the next 20 years memeing him and manufacturing him at scale, and horror has spent the last decade reading his entrails. The alpha performer is perhaps the most instantly clockable type of chud, though their stock has fallen in recent years. But I'm sure many of you have experience with this next type. So Danny's boyfriend Christian, the most elegant portrayal of the passive manipulator to date, is just terrible at being a boyfriend. But he's terrible in a way that tends to fly under the radar, because he doesn't yell, he doesn't threaten or engage in any kind of violence. His weapon of choice is guilt. Christian makes Danny feel like her grief is an imposition. Danny's entire family was just wiped out in one fell swoop, one grim familicide, and Christian spends most of the film making her feel guilty for being too much as a result of it. That's the passive manipulator trying to engineer a breakup without having to initiate one. By the time Harger crowns Danny May Queen and Christian goes up in flames inside a bearskin, the audience is horrified, but Danny is relieved. Because Danny finally got closure in an admittedly insane kind of way, but that's the business. There aren't many happy endings in horror. And speaking of unhappy endings, Arthur Fleck is a failed clown, a failed comedian, a failed son, a failed everything. And the film Joker is deliberate about how it frames his failure, not as his fault, as society's fault. Everyone failed Arthur Fleck, from his caseworker up to the city of Gotham itself. And Arthur Fleck is going to make sure you understand that before he starts killing people. That's the incel's self-mythology. The world owes him. His violence is justice. Joker got criticized for being too sympathetic to Arthur and to incels in general, but I think that criticism was the point. The film isn't endorsing his worldview, it's showing you exactly how that worldview feels from inside the brain of its holder, to better understand how men like that get there. And speaking of men like that, in Alex Garland's Men, Harper is reeling from the death of her husband, James. The film slowly reveals through flashbacks what actually happened. Harper told James she wanted a divorce. James told her he would kill himself if she left. Harper refused to be held hostage by that threat, insisted on the divorce, and James punched her in the face. James, as a coercive man, could not accept that Harper's love was hers to withdraw, so he weaponized his own life to keep her from leaving, and actually ends it as one final millstone to hang around her neck, forcing the guilt of his taking his own life on her for the rest of hers. Garland then literalizes this by making every man in the country village she escapes to the same man with the same face, who holds the same presumption and the same refusal to be told no. Because coercive men are a structural problem with one face but countless stories. Speaking of avoidance and chuds, Zach Cregger's breakout hit about subterranean Detroit horrors gave us Justin Long as AJ, and Long, king of the horror cameo, understood exactly what Cregger was asking of him, because AJ played the avoidant, the chud who has convinced himself he's a nice, down-to-earth guy, the kind of man who buys drinks and makes conversation, and then proceeds to ignore consent and consequence in equal measure. When rape allegations catch up with him, AJ doesn't reckon with them. He doesn't take a moral inventory. He manages them. He's not in Detroit because he feels remorse. He's there because he needs money. The allegations are a hit to his wallet and reputation, but not to his morals. And that distinction essentially sums him up. And then Zach Cregger shoves him into a pit with final girl Tess. And AJ, faced with the opportunity to be something other than what he is, to rise above his limitations, fails completely, pushing Tess off a water tower to save himself, using the final girl as sacrificial offering in an abortive escape attempt. Because there's always a woman who pays the price around AJ. But Tess lives. And as Monster Mommy closes in, AJ begins to dissemble and rationalize, starts constructing the version of events in which what he did was reasonable. And hilariously, the film kills him mid-sentence. That's not an accident, because the avoidant always has one more thing to say, one more explanation, one more tortured bullshit argument that makes him sound reasonable. And Monster Mommy splits his head open before he can. Our next chud, Josh, rents a sentient android woman named Iris from a robotics company, controls her emotions and intelligence from an app on his phone, uses her, sexually and otherwise, and then tries to frame her for murder, all while still seeing himself as the vaunted nice guy. A man with total control over a woman who's furious that she doesn't appreciate how nice he is. Iris eventually becomes aware that she's an android being exploited by Josh. She becomes aware that she's being framed for murder, and she eventually takes steps to liberate herself from his control. Josh does not take this kindly. He takes it personally, because Josh sees himself as a nice guy. And that's Chudsploitation in a nutshell. A man with total control over a woman who commits morally egregious acts, who is furious that said woman does not appreciate how nice he is, how good he is to her. For Josh, Iris is not an object of love. She's a medium for his exercise of dominance. The app on his phone is basically the One Wish Willow with a user interface, and that is the administrative man. And speaking of the One Wish Willow, Bear is the final chud in our taxonomy, but he is no less contemptible despite the fact that he is so passive. Even before he wishes his wish, the inciting incident of obsession, he's already showing you that he's a bad person. His cat eats sleep medication he left out, and it dies. But Bear just cleans up and goes out that night to pursue Nikki with no thought to the cat at all. She asks him directly if he has feelings for her, and he lies. And the moment she is gone, he breaks the One Wish Willow and wishes for her total, consuming, all-obliterating love. Because he wanted her without the risk of her saying no. The wish works, and it tortures Nikki into existential insanity. She begs to die. Bear watches all of it and continues with his life anyway, trying to force a life with Wish Nikki despite real Nikki violently rejecting his efforts. Bear is the entitled coward, the man who mistakes possession for love and cowardice for caution. 7 films, 7 types, all chudsploitation. The subgenre being built around these men isn't exploitation in the cheap sense. It's the continuation of what horror has done forever, finding the thing that's rotting underneath the surface of the culture, excavating the remains, and filming the autopsy. American Psycho named the alpha performer in 2000. Midsommar found the passive manipulator. Joker excavated the incel. Men mapped the coercive man. Barbarian caught the avoidant went mid-sentence. Companion built the administrative man, and Obsession gave us the entitled coward. 7 types, 25 years, and one continuous argument that horror has been making while the rest of the culture was still deciding whether to take these kinds of guys seriously. Like the video if you liked it, sub if you would like more content like this, and comment down below if you have a chud that I've overlooked.